So we always say in the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Hey everyone, my name is Andre Walton, the Southeast Regional Organizer for OWR, and welcome to the Revolution. Today, my guest is Tory Lowe, the most requested advocate in the state. Tory's known for his community organizing. He's even been featured on Vice News. So I'm really glad to have you, man. Let's get into this discussion. Can you talk about some of the work that you do in the community?
Well, I frame it as advocacy. I'm a victim's advocate, and I'm by request. So I don't chase situations. I don't see it on the news and be like, "Let me deal with that." Uh, what happens is families call me to help them resolve the issue, and I organize the families from a frontline perspective, and we bring results that way. That way, is no interruption in what we're trying to do and the message we're trying to send to our community. So I think that's very important. And I think that we all should, as people that are trying to deal with the community, we should all try to practice a direct hands on approach and bring results that way because that brings trust.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want is to trust.
Yeah. And I really like the approach that you take because basically what you do is you help those who basically cannot help themselves.
Right.
For example, from when you were featured in Vice, it was a family who weren't getting any attention. They weren't getting any voice, and you brought a voice to them. Can you talk about that situation and what you did to help that family out?
Well, the thing is, I built up my social media networks to be almost like a media outlet. So most the news don't cover everything, and sometimes when they do cover it, some of the narratives are will piss the families off because they always bring up uh, things that they're not even relevant to the situation. So what I've developed is a way to get people heard, stay on target, and try to get a result base. So unfortunately, the news or I can't get to everybody that requests that type of service. But if you can get to me and we do it, the results are clear. I mean, we're going to get to the point without having all of the misconstrued ideas added to the story. So the family has the power, the 100% total power, and the movement, and it's in their hands and not in other ideas that will use the situation to their advantage or to their agenda. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to practice keeping all of my uh, the people that I help situations. I keep I practice keeping the power in their hands.
Yeah, most definitely. Because when you have a media apparatus on one side, they usually drive a narrative, and we've seen that time and time again with multiple stories of black men getting shot, and then they want to bring up their records and past records, and which has nothing to do with
Right.
the actual
The
murder or
situation, the
anything that
incident. Yeah.
exactly. But I definitely want to get into that more, and we definitely gonna get into that. But one of the things that, since it's so relevant at this moment, that I want to talk about is that Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities in America,
That's
and
right.
it
In the
definitely
country.
exactly, and it definitely plays into the disparities and issues that really plague this city, such as job opportunities, schools, services, healthcare, everything, and we can definitely see how that's playing out with COVID. Can you talk about how racial segregation affects Milwaukee?
Well, the thing is, Milwaukee, the black community in Milwaukee has no economic base. And when you can keep a people without an economic base or not provide or help build an economic structure, you're going to have high crimes. You're going to have prostitution, drug dealing, because it's all economics. People are going to find a way to eat. And sometimes when there is no solid economic structure, then people resort to low frequency style type ideas, maybe some ideas that they may not be even proud of just to put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put people in between a rock and a hard place, sometimes they make decisions that they wouldn't normally make. So what we have to understand is that Milwaukee is one of the worst places for African Americans to live due to that factor, that main factor, that there is not economic structure in the Black community. And the second factor is that we have some of the worst test scores in the country. The Milwaukee public school system is one of the worst public school systems in the country according to test scores. Mm-hmm. So you add bad economics and poor education, and then you got a lot of things that probably shouldn't go on because of the lack of knowledge. So what we want to do is try to attack economics, and we want to attack the education system, because if you can get those two things going in the right direction, you can change the overall outcome in the long run for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I used to actually do delivery driving downtown Milwaukee, and one of the things that I've always was kind of baffled to see is that there's a lot of economic development downtown, but then when you get to the north side of Milwaukee or the south side of Milwaukee, it's a whole different story. The roads are not as good. I mean, you're seeing trolleys being built in Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee, that actually serve no actual good purpose. I mean,
it doesn't even go anywhere.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's a serious problem not only with the disparities, but obviously representation within the city government. Can you kind of talk about that as well?
Well, Milwaukee has, when it comes to the Black community, we have some of the poorest elected officials in the country. Like, it's like bad coaches. It's like, always put the idea to sports. I mean, if you got a bad football team and they have 3 bad seasons, then the coach's job on the line, which means that his staff's job on the line. I mean, it's about trying to make progress. And if you have a certain amount of time, like 4 years or 8 years or, 12 years or 16 years, it's people, elected officials that have been in office that long, and they're still leading people to believe that they're going to make change. But good coaches come in and you can see an immediate difference in at least the first 3 years. You give them 3 years to implement their idea. Then after the 3rd year, you start seeing the fruits of that labor. So Milwaukee has elected officials that have been in office for 3-4 terms. And people still believe that they can turn things around, which is almost the definition of insanity.
That is by definition insanity. And I mean, we can definitely see that same response with the COVID crisis. I mean, Milwaukee has the highest rate of cases. They have the highest rate of deaths due to the COVID-19. And you can definitely see the disparities within healthcare and a correlation with COVID-19. Can you talk about the response to the COVID-19 crisis from the government?
Well, I always be making posts about COVID-19 because I'm an idealist, and I work in idea, not actually. I don't have to wait till it's bad to realize that it was going to get bad. I can see the forecast. Mm-hmm. I can see the 5-day forecast. You feel me? I can tell, okay, if this happens, this is going on, this is what's going to eventually take place. If you understand history, if you study history, and you see and you know knowledge, you have knowledge of how things evolve, then you can kind of see things coming if they're going a certain way. But with COVID-19, my biggest fear was that the Black and Latino communities would become the face of COVID-19, and then they would be that would be used to discriminate against minorities. And you got to realize we're living in a country that had Jim Crow laws. Mm-hmm. So people think this can't happen in America, but the history will always repeat itself if you don't understand propaganda, ideas, the way that they deliver certain ideas in the media. And if you don't understand propaganda and laws that are meant to demonize psychologically and create a certain idea that will put African Americans or Latinos at a disadvantage, then you don't see it until you're being to the actual ideas being perpetrated on you, actually, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened was they started talking about the Black people were dying more from COVID-19. A lot of the Black leaders were pushing for testing in the community. They were just specifically saying Blacks and Latinas. They didn't even say whites. And whites, the truth is, whites have more COVID-19 than Blacks. more whites have COVID-19 than blacks. But they were focusing on the death. And many of the African Americans in the community, they had already had pre-existing conditions. And a lot of, I was dealing with a woman that was Latino, and she was on the respirator, the ventilator, for more than 30 days. And she had beat COVID, but she could not beat the ventilator. Mm-hmm. So, but everything that happened, if you go into the hospital under COVID-19, no matter how you die, whether it's from a heart attack, whether it's from, a stroke, they're going to put it all down as COVID-19 related. So some of those numbers are not true. They're not dying from COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are dying from pre-existing issues, and they're labeling it as COVID-19. And I know that for a fact because I looked at medical records, and people are calling me, showing me what, I've seen paperwork, and I've seen pre-existing conditions. I've seen people going to the hospital who are already sick, and they were already in a bad condition, and they put it down as COVID-19. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that brings up another issue then. So if people are dying from pre-existing conditions, let's say it's separate from COVID-19, that's an issue in itself that they're tagging it that way because it's driving a media bias. But we can definitely say, okay, if we had more healthcare in the Black community, such as healthcare for all, or right, actually more access to healthcare, they wouldn't even be dying from these pre-existing conditions. So we can see disparities.
That's in our healthcare system. World. Exactly. That's in a perfect world. Before COVID-19, a lot of the hospitals in Milwaukee was under investigation for lack of care of Blacks. They were under. A woman went to the hospital with severe health issues, chest pains, and everything. And this was before COVID-19, and she left the hospital after waiting hours and died trying to make it to another hospital. I mean, Calvion Purtle, he went in there for a bowel obstruction, and they didn't even do an X-ray. He had a bowel obstruction, and they said he had a reaction to some tartar sauce, and sent him home, and he died that night in the bathroom at his mother's house. So it was already issues with the service of the care given to in poor communities with these hospitals. So when COVID-19 hit, we didn't get the test originally. The tests were given to the rich and the middle class. And then all of a sudden, after a few errors and after the CDC released that some of the tests were contaminated, and after all of these, after a while, you start getting in numbers and statistics. And so all of a sudden, it was this huge drive to come after Black and Latinos. And I didn't trust it. I didn't trust it. I felt like they were trying to make Blacks and Latinos the face of COVID-19. But then the suburb community was fighting for their constitutional rights for everything to open up. And they were standing in protest with guns, no masks. They had man, woman, and child at these rallies, which triggered me to believe that they know something that we don't know, because I would beg to believe, I would not believe that a man would put his children and wife and grandparents at risk. So I'm not stupid enough to look at that rally as they should be in the house, blah, blah, blah. I look at it like, what do they know that we don't know? Mm-hmm. Because a man is not going to put his whole entire family in jeopardy. And they were at the Capitol with guns threatening to kill elected officials, right? Mm-hmm. So forward to today, the suburbs is open, and all the Black communities is still closed, right? Yeah. So a Black girl sent me a picture that she went out to a grocery store in a white community, and they told her that she needed a mask. Mm-hmm. And then when she got in the store with the mask on, she saw that it was whites walking around with no mask. Why? Because our communities were painted as the face of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And we were walking around with the mask on. And all the suburbs who are our bosses, who have better economic structure, who are employees and employers and supervisors, they live out in the suburbs. So now when we go to the suburbs to take part in, going to the store or going into the restaurant, they're going to look at us like we're the ones with COVID-19, because we didn't fight for anything. We just sat back and let the governors tell us what to do. Mm-hmm. So while this was happening, they were fighting for their rights.
Mm-hmm.
They were fighting to be free and go to the parks. So now uh, they're opening up, and our side of town is still going along with these rules, which is very dangerous because it sends a psychological message to the suburbs that okay, we don't have COVID, but if a black person come up here, they may have COVID because their leadership said that they needed to test and they needed help with the COVID-19. So you're going to see what Jim Crow could never do. What you're about to see is what Jim Crow could have never did. Because now they're going to blame it on COVID-19. But we all know that it's going to be real close to being racist. And if you go into a restaurant with your mask on or try to practice social distancing in the suburbs where they weren't even doing that, then you're going to look like something like you're the sick person.
Well, I think you definitely have a good point because if we look back in history, I mean, black people and minority people were known as the face of AIDS, HIV, things like that. And we look at the crack pandemic. I mean, it was all the black people were the face of it, even though white people used it at the same rates or maybe even higher rates.
Higher rate.
So it definitely makes sense that something like that would drive that type of narrative, and we've seen it through history. So
it's a repeated of history.
Exactly. But that's something we definitely try to change the minds of people to get them to understand what's going on, and that's just something we're just going to have to fight through, and it's going to be a long fight. Like most,
it's already the damage already done.
Mm-hmm.
I told everybody we should have been out there, even if we didn't agree with what was going on. Anytime in America somebody's fighting for their constitutional rights, African Americans should not be, discriminatory of them trying to fight for their constitutional rights. I don't care who it is, and I don't care if we don't agree. If anybody says their constitutional rights is being infringed upon, we should be a part of that so we can tell our side.
Exactly.
But instead, we stayed in the house laughing at them. But now they back to work, going to the bars, going out to eat, going to their parks. And a woman hit me up today and was like, "How come the suburbs is open and over in my neighborhood we still shut down?" Well, they fought, and you sat in the house.
Yeah.
What am I gonna say?
I'm glad you brought up constitutional rights because one of the things that you really fight for is the constitutional rights of men and women who've been killed unjustly. Can you talk about some of the work that you've been working on with that, and also you've been really advocating for Ahmaud Arbery? Can you also talk about that?
Well, the thing is, I was a victim of a hate crime in Minnesota, so I had a case where some white males came up to my job when I was at work, and they tried to tie me up and throw me in a hog grinder. We had a fight. I didn't even know what they was even trying to do, but I know that when I was fighting them, I didn't know what they were trying to do at the time. But once I got to court, and a year and a half later, it took us to have the hearing, and when they said it came out in court what they was trying to do. Like I didn't know what they was trying to do. I just know that I was too handsome. I just know that I came from the streets. You're not gonna just do me kind of way.
Right.
So, but when they said what they was trying to do, after that my whole life changed. I didn't realize that that's what they was actually trying to do, trying to tie me up and throw me in this hog grinder. And I just kind of I remember that day like it was yesterday. I think after that I couldn't believe it. I had never did anything to anybody. Was it because of my skin color? I didn't even know these people. So it was like, okay, we have to fight. I see that America still has issues with the black skin tone, with my melanin. I mean, you don't even have to be, guilty of anything. They're gonna make you guilty. Or something. And if you die, they're gonna say you tried to steal. That's like the cut and paste narrative of anybody black that gets killed by white people unjustly. They say that they were a thief, or they was trying to steal, or they was trying to break in, or they thought that they were in danger. Like it's like they cut and paste that narrative to everybody. Just like Ahmaud, Arbery, the Chicago activist was working with some of the Atlanta activists and my Chicago activist friends brought me in on the movement for Armand. So that's how I got involved because I keep a close connection with everybody who's fighting in the struggle. So they always bring me in because I have a huge platform, and they also add me in because they want to hear what I think or get some information from me on how to approach the situation.
Yeah, but I think it's really important that we have voices who speak for those who've been killed unjustly. Because first of all, obviously they can't speak for themselves; they've lost
Right.
their lives, and
Right.
also we need to make it more apparent in public that we're going to fight against such injustices because
Right.
a lot of the times I think we as a community we get very discouraged because things happen so much we almost get numb to it, and we have to
That's right.
stand up to show them that we won't stand for it. And I think the work that you're doing with that is continuing to put pressure on the police department, the people who are taking arms up upon themselves, who are not public officials and police officers to do these things. So we really have to change the system and show that we can fight because that's the only way it's actually going to stop. But yeah,
That's true.
Another thing I wanted to discuss is I think another issue that was it a Milwaukee man and he had been shot and it was about a police officer. I don't know the exact details and he wasn't charged with anything. Am I correct about that?
It wasn't a shooting. They actually put him in a illegal chokehold and killed him at a house party they was having during quarantine. So Joel Acevedo was a security guard, and he was friends with some Milwaukee police officers. And he went over to a party where they was having a party at one of the police officers in question's homes, and something happened where the officer ended up putting him in an illegal chokehold and killing him, and he had him in this illegal chokehold for 10 minutes. The officer did call 911. Cops came, and he was charged, I think, with a lesser, like a battery or something less, and then they gave him like $50,000 bond bail or whatever. Then the guy Joel, he died, and the officer was supposed to be brought up on charges of some homicide, murder charges, but yet he's still out, and he didn't get his bail adjusted to the crime, and he's still at home, and nothing is being done. You can't even find his records on CCAP. It's just a mess, and he shouldn't get any favoritism. He's still working as a police officer. He's just on leave, and he's charged with a murder. So I don't see how that can happen. I guess if it's blue is true, I guess. So we just have to keep applying pressure. We just have to keep making the public aware, because all of this is being done on taxpayers' money. And the truth is, you're taking a township's money, and this is happening, and it's funded by the taxpayers. So when taxpayers realize that they have the power, then things happen. But if they continue to allow these celebrities to be not celebrities, if they continue to allow these elected officials to act like celebrities and allow these police officers to continue to be rogue, and you're paying for it, so you're paying for the abuse. You're paying for the misdirection and misleadership. Once you realize that this is happening on your dime, then it kind of changes the focus, and it gives a good movement to create accountability.
Yeah. Exactly. We definitely need a systematic change. It's not just one issue here or one issue there. No, we need changes in our economic structure. We need changes in our healthcare structure. We need changes in our media structure.
Right.
Because we know how.
Oh, I get into it. Exactly. Black media is trash in Milwaukee, 100%.
And we need systematic change in our police departments and how they conduct themselves. I mean, we need a whole systematic change, and it's going to be
well, change comes from a group of people that starts to inform enough people to make it trendy. See, it starts with probably a few people Then they inform a group of people, and that group of people start to make it a trend. No different than Twitter, like
Mm-hmm.
how things, trending on Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just it started somewhere. It was posted to Twitter. Next thing, a group of people got a hold of it. Then they brought a massive awareness to a lot of people after that. That's
Exactly.
viral. So we have to start making our movements do the same thing as any social media. It's the same idea, but we just have to do it through change, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that change is popular, that
Mm-hmm.
change is trending, and it'll happen. It'll happen overnight.
Yeah. We just gotta stick to it though and fight for it. And it was one last thing I wanted to talk about. It's not as big of a story, but I think it really well it was a big story on social media obviously, but it
Hmm.
really has to do with a really big issue that I want to talk about. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure you've seen it at this point. Joe Biden basically said if you're having trouble between voting for me or Trump, you ain't black. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I think it really shows the ignorance of the Democratic Party
Right.
and the fact that they feel entitled to the black vote, and
They
they
feel
need
very
to
entitled to that
understand,
vote.
that no one's entitled to our votes, and they
Well,
need to work
well,
for it.
well.
And I don't know if you heard about those comments, but can you kind of talk about that?
All right. Check this out. Joe Biden was part of one of the worst crime bills that ever hit our communities, and it started the mass incarceration epidemic. I'm independent. I got friends who are Democrats. I got friends who are Republicans. I got friends who are part of the Tea Party, and I listen to it all. But at the end of the day, I always believe that the black communities just should have had their own independent party, and we should always elect people with our best interest for what we need, and not try to include ourselves in the well-to-do ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So we need ideas that are specifically engineered for what we need to move forward. And right now we have all our ideas mixed in with people who are well to do, and we are struggling on a day-to-day basis. So I think once we become our own independent idea, we can start to make real change in our neighborhoods because
Mm-hmm.
we'll start electing people from that idea. But the Democratic Party is trash. It's trash. And over the last 50 years, we've been under Democratic leadership, and we have some of the worst communities across the country. And that's the truth. The leadership is poor. But as you can see, the disparities, white community Democratic communities are doing better than African American Democratic communities. So they are serving and communities. It's just not yours. It's just not mine. So what do that look like? And if you go back further with the Democratic idea fought hard to keep us in slavery. They was the main political idea that held us in slavery. And so I don't see how we ended up coming back around when the last 50, 70 or so years being back on the Democratic plantation. But it's time to wake up. It's time to say, okay, we've been a part of this idea for over 50 something years and nothing has happened. And we're getting worse. We don't have no black businesses. We have to regroup, rethink, and reshape how we're voting, how we're looking at these politics, how we're looking at how we elect people, and start turning these things around. Now, if we get off the Democratic plantation, we can definitely start making changes in 3 to 4 years. Just like when the slaves were set free, in about 3 to 4 years, under the then Republican idea, they were in Congress. They had thriving communities in a short amount of time. So it's not hard. It's not hard to do. Like what they call it, the Reconstruction period.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing how fast that black people built up communities and began to develop uh, their communities and become congressmen. Become elected officials and fight for what they needed, and it was amazing. But then, as you know, at the end of the Civil War, after they had the promise to be protected, something happened with the politics where they eliminated the protection, and then uh, the white supremacists was able to get back in there and tear up most of those communities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, we definitely have a lot of work to do. But where can people find you? How can they help you out and support your movement?
Well, it's like the A team. If you can find me, and if you can hire them, I don't. I got so many death threats. I get so many death threats that I don't put my information out in the public. That if they follow me on Facebook and inbox me, I'll see that. Or if they go to torylowe.com and inbox me, I'll see that. Right. But I have to make sure that I protect myself, because when you get into a rare space of fighting for a certain idea, everything is not good to deal with, because people will try to set you up. And a few years ago, I started getting set up, so right at this point, what I do is I try to look through the situation. So it's best to just go to torylowe.com and send me an email about the situation. I'll do some research on it. And if I feel like that's something that I can handle, I'll get back to you. Or if there's something that I want to be a part of, then I'll get back to you. But mostly people think, oh, you just help everybody. No, I can't. It's no way possible that I can help everybody. I just have to be selective. And I only do the real dark issues, because there are so many organizations that get monies to help certain issues that they need to do certain things. And then there are no issues organizations really handling the dark issues. So I stay in the dark space. I stay in that dark space, and I deal with a lot of families in tragedy, victims, human trafficking, murders, you name it. In the dark space, that's where I live at. That's why I mostly live in the dark space. And like I said, but we have to get involved, because what we have to do is have an entity out here that people trust to do the right thing. And if we can get one entity up, one ideal up that people can trust, we'll make changes fast.
Yeah, most definitely. And I love the work you're doing, and I'm rooting for you, and I'm always trying to get involved. So we're gonna
thank you, brother, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we definitely gonna stay connected, and hopefully I can have you on again, because you always doing consistent work, and I would love to be updated with what you're doing.
Like I said, keep growing. I appreciate everything you're doing right now. I would love to see you 5 years from now, what you grow and develop into, because you are a very smart young man. And when I first met you, I was like, look, I can't wait to see how you are in a few years. And because as long as you are asking questions and growing, I just want to see that. That's beautiful, because so many young men take the wrong route. They think that they're going to, take the drug route, or they're going to take the pimp route, or they want to be known for something negative, instead of putting their time and energy into turning the community around in the right direction. And I praise anybody that's willing to put themselves in a space to make a change for the positive. That's just so dope to me.
We just gotta keep the fight going, man.
So we always say at the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.